started, shall we? It's my pleasure to introduce our host for today's epic occasion. I call her Mom Boss, but everyone else knows her as Clayton's favorite copy cub. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Carline Anglade-Cole.
Epic does not come close to describing the experience that we are creating for you today. I've invited industry leaders in copywriting and direct response to join me in an all-star tribute to the legendary copywriter and my mentor, Clayton Gerald Makepeace. We lost Clayton on March 24th, 2020, right at the time we were embarking on the COVID epidemic. We thought that surely after a few months, life would come back to normal and we could do a formal tribute to Clayton. But life is nowhere normal. As a copywriting community, we have not been able to come together to honor this legend in our industry the way that he deserves until now. As we approach the 1-year anniversary of his death, the copywriting community is going all out to show our appreciation to a man who has given many of us a career we would never have imagined possible. He gave many of us tools, even a blueprint to master a skill called copywriting, so we could become A-list writers demanding huge fees and royalties. And he gave many of us his time to have as a mentor and a friend who was extremely generous. For those of you who didn't get a chance to meet Clayton or speak with him, I promise you this: by the end of this event, you will know him. You will emulate him. You will be inspired by him, and you will know his prized secrets. One thing this event absolutely cannot be is a tearful, sentimental journey of Clayton's life, because I will lose it, and you do not want to see my ugly cry. So, not allowed at all. Clayton's goal was to pass the torch and empower writers and marketers. Black, white, poor, rich, male, female, international, domestic, didn't matter. If you wanted to learn, Clayton was willing to teach you. So this is a lessons learned event because yes, it's true. Clayton was an exceptional man, a creative genius, a master marketer, an extraordinarily gifted copywriter, but he was also a generous and inspiring teacher. So for the next 3 hours, we're going to focus on Clayton's amazing gift of teaching, what he taught aspiring writers like me and so many others, what he shared and taught even with his peers like Gary Bencivenga, another legend among us today. This is a lessons learned and lessons shared event. We have 17 speakers who have never appeared together until now. Each speaker has just 7 minutes to share with you a powerful lesson, either learned or shared by Clayton, something that was instrumental or life-changing, for his career or her career. And do you know why we have 17 speakers? It's because I simply could not squeeze in any more people during the time that we have. We could go on for days if we had to invite people just to come and speak about Clayton. But each one of these 17 amazing copywriters and marketers has volunteered their time to give you that valuable lesson that Clayton gave them. These 17 speakers include, and this is in order of appearance for today's event, Bob Bly, Denise Ford, Kim Krause-Schwam, Paris Lampropoulos, Pauline Longdon, Gary Bencivenga, Cindy Buthorn, David Deutsch, Tierra Cole, Brian Kurtz, Richard Viggory, Marcella Allison, Kevin Rogers, Milan Deher, Lori Haller, Caleb O'Dowd, and me, Carline Anglade-Cole. Each one of our 17 speakers could, like I said, easily talk for hours. We could all talk for hours about their personal and professional experience with Clayton. However, I've just asked them to share one important story or lesson that they feel can help you become a better, stronger copywriter or marketer. So in each presentation, listen out for the answers to these 3 questions. Who was Clayton to me? What's the biggest lesson learned from Clayton? How did Clayton or his lesson impact my life/career? So get your pen, paper, or iPad, whatever you need, get it ready out to take notes that are going to be extremely valuable for you, okay? By giving you these gems from Clayton, we will honor not only his life, career, and love for teaching, but we are also continuing his legacy. We will pass the torch to the next generation of copywriters and marketers. So when I bring out these speakers, there will not be a long list of introductions because they're all amazing people. You should actually know them. And if you don't, you better get to know these people. They represent a remarkable history in marketing, a current success in the industry, and the future of direct response copywriting and marketing. And they're all here right now to continue Clayton's teaching legacy with you. And one thing that you might also notice, the speakers are all wearing red. That's because years ago, Clayton told me that he never wanted anyone to be sad at any event, or especially not at his funeral. He wanted his wife, Wendy, to wear a red tight dress, and he wanted his friends and family to celebrate his life. So the red that we are all wearing represents the celebration of the life of Clayton Makepeace. And we're going to be happy as we pass the torch and the teachings of a man who led an amazing and rewarding life. So are you all excited about this? Let me hear it. Are you guys excited? I want to know. Yeah? Oh, I think I hear a couple yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, awesome. So am I. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this game started, right? Let's get the show moving. It is my pleasure and honor to begin this program with a living copywriting legend, Mr. Bob Bly.
Hey guys, good to be together with all you. A little sentimental, a little sad, but I'm so glad that Carline that you did this. So I know we have limited time, so I'm going to go right into the 3 things. Number 1, who was Clayton to me? What happened to me is I had years been in copywriting, and I heard his name, but I wasn't that aware of him. And one day I got a call from one of the large financial newsletter publishers in Florida saying, could you come down and help us with email marketing? Clayton Makepeace recommended you. And Clayton and I had never met. We really never talked. So I got there, and that was the first time I met him. So step 1 was I met him. Step 2 was immediately, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, I liked him. I liked him a lot. He was likable for many reasons, but part of it was just some people have an inherent charisma in them. I have the opposite, but he did, and I immediately liked him for multiple reasons. Then quickly, even that day, working at the publisher on various promotions and discussions, it immediately went above like to admiration. I said, this guy is amazing. And I know a lot of you here the same way. You're amazing. And then, it went to the final step, which remains today. I was in awe of him. I think there, are only a little group of people who are at his level, and you could question whether anybody's at this level, or if not, there aren't that many. And he was beyond great. So that was my relationship. Now, what I learned from him, of course, like all of you guys, many things, but 2 in particular. He and I worked on one tabloid together, and he was, I guess, the creative director, and I was the copywriter. And I learned 2 important techniques that I hadn't been using before. One was my tabloids or magalogs all had headlines at the top, but he, above the headline, had a pre-head. And it was always a credibility pre-head. Here's one from the promotion we wrote. Years of, and this is his copy, years of clinical data reported, years of clinical data reported in medicine's most prestigious peer-reviewed journals prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, colon. And then I said to him, why do you do that there? You know, we have on page 9, we start to get into the credibility. And he said, because people are skeptical and you need to disarm their credibility immediately. And he taught me what I now call, I don't know if he called it, a credibility pre-head, technique I now always use in almost everything I do. So that was incredibly valuable to me, and I did not know it before I met him. And the second one, I looked at some of the copy he had edited for the front page and the inside front page of our tabloid, and I looked at the bullets and I said, Clayton, these don't really have to do with anything about the product or the benefits. You know, a lot of them, it reads like a table of contents to the tabloid. And he said to me very simply, he says, before the tabloid can sell them on the dietary supplement, you have to sell them on reading the tabloid, which was an idea I had never thought of. But you know, the first step is not just to get attention, but to sell the person on wanting, sorry guys, I thought I turned that down, on wanting to read the promotion. And, you know, I adapted that now to everything I do. In terms of how he made an impact on me, many ways, but here's the one that stands freshest now. I think, and I don't know if you guys all agree with me or disagree, I think there's a lot of egomania in copywriting and internet marketing today. There are all these new people that I've never heard of claiming to be the god of copywriting or the god of internet marketing. Clayton was the god of copywriting, and he was so humble. He never said any of these things that these other guys said. You know, you have these people, a lot of these people are big hat, no cattle. Well, in comparison, Clayton owned a cattle ranch the entire size of Texas. And plus, he was one of my favorite people in the world. And like you guys, I really miss him.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. Credibility pre-head, I saw you guys caught that. That was a classic Clayton move, and you are absolutely right. That is gold, setting up that pre-head so that it can sort of go right into that headline. That's perfect. I remember that package you worked with Bob, with Clayton also, Bob, the vision package that you guys worked on together. That was part of that team. I was kind of hiding behind the background.
I didn't see you. I didn't know that.
You didn't see me because it was a vision package. I got you. All right. Thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate you starting it off for us. Thank you for coming. We're going to move right on to one of my favorite people, wonderful woman who has been in the industry for many decades and has been an amazing mentor to me also. Ladies and gentlemen, please, I'd like to welcome Miss Denise Ford.
Wow, thank you, Carline, for that. It's my great pleasure to be here with all of you on behalf of American Writers and Artists Institute, which is where not just I learned lessons from Clayton, but so many people did. But before I begin, I got to tell you, that prequel, that tribute you just did was beyond awesome. The photos, the music, it was really lovely, and it put me in a great space in my heart. So thank you for that. And I also love seeing photos of a lot of people who are speaking today. I bet you were shocked to see yourselves in some of them. But it's so lovely to have those memories. So who is Clayton to me? Clayton was a unique human being. I first met him when I invited him to speak at one of our early boot camps back in 2006. And in addition to working together, one of the things I most remember about him is all the times we got to talk to him or laugh with him, Clayton and Wendy, on many occasions at those boot camps and on several social events too. He was an industry in the legend back then, and obviously now. He was tireless in his devotion to the work that we asked him to do. He also was a tiny bit crazy when I met him. But that's nothing new because I think he lived near the edge. He worked on the edge. I remember one boot camp when he and Don Mahoney, one of the founders of American Writers, they were in the hall talking about something and they were very animated. So I went up to see them and they were talking motorcycles. It must have been Harleys, I think. But they each had photos with their bikes and they were showing them to each other with as much affection as they did when they showed photos of their family. It was hysterical to me. I loved that. Clayton Makepeace was a treasured speaker at all AWAI events for many, many years. And he never missed an invitation to speak at these events because he loved being with people. He loved teaching. You said that so well. And he was so a teacher mentor, which is not necessarily the same thing and certainly not common. And he wasn't satisfied just to be a masterful copywriter. He wanted other people to succeed, to have that same success. That photo of you, Carline, as a kid at that table. I mean, maybe you weren't a kid. You look like a kid to me. And he took you on, he took you on and mentored you. That's just so indicative, I think, of his spirit. I think Clayton not only shared his professional skills, which, like all of us, develop over time, he shared his knowledge and his expertise about the industry, about how it worked, about the importance of working with graphics. And I know Laurie has great stories about that. He understood the whole big picture and he relished in teaching the little details. One of the things I remember most about him is the enthusiasm he exhibited when he was teaching or talking about a certain bullet point in his presentation. He also had a remarkable curiosity and interest in learning from fellow writers and masters. I mean, the way he spoke of you, Richard, and you, Gary, when we couldn't have you at boot camp, but the way he spoke of you with not just esteem, but with respect. And it was respect related to the volume of your work and I think his relationship to you individually. And that's something I think we all take away from him. It isn't just the work, it's our relationship to it and to others. There are so many lessons that I'm sure we're going to hear about today, but I'd like to share just a few from members of the AWAI community, if I might. Katie Yackel, as many of you know, is the executive director for American Writers, and she brought Clayton into the AWAI family years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And she's shared different stories of how Clayton was not only a good teacher, but he was a friend and mentor to her and Rebecca Matter. In that slideshow, if you recall, there's a photo of Clayton and Wendy sitting in the bookstore with Katie and Rebecca. That was typical of what he would do, even when he was, he was going to go speak or he just spoke, but that his presence, he was always present. And Katie said she doesn't think she was ever on a webinar with Clayton that lasted less than 2 hours because he wanted to be sure every question was answered. He was the ultimate champion of up-and-coming writers. That's true. Back then, I think I was running the webinars and I kept looking at my watch. He just was determined to make sure that the answer merited the question. Paul Hollingshead, who's also one of the founders of AWAI, he said that Clayton is such a giant in our industry and a most gentle giant at that. And that bespeaks a quality of Clayton I think we all can recognize. Paul said, the first time I met Clayton, he didn't know me from Adam. It was at boot camp. I was nervous as hell, but it took him 1 second to make me feel like we had been friends for years. He just reached out his hand, leaned in, and suddenly I was the most important person in the room at that moment. And the funny thing is, Paul said, I felt that way with Clayton, whether we were one-on-one in person or watching him share his secrets from the stage, which he loved to do. Many of the writers that have been part of AWAI over the years remember Clayton from these events. And most of them remember him as someone who changed their lives. Pam Foster remembers Clayton as someone who had a genuine interest in nurturing the careers of others. Sean McCool tells a story that at his first boot camp, when he was deciding if copywriting was legit, there are many people, I'm sure in your experience, who don't think it is legitimate until they understand what it is and how it's done. So Sean came with that sort of attitude to that first boot camp. And he said Clayton's keynote speech sold him on the validity of this career and on the people that he had met at that event. That's pretty powerful. And he goes on to say it's changed his life forever. Chris Alsop won a coveted bootcamp spec assignment that AWA was offering. And this one was to work with Clayton. And she says, when you are working with Clayton, you never, ever doubt that he believes in you. But one of the best stories I heard about Clayton came from Larry Owen. Larry wrote in to say that he met Clayton at Will's Honky Tonk Bar in Sarasota, Florida. Wendy, I've never been there, but I'm sure it's just as it sounds. Larry says it was an edgy biker bar that was full of Harleys and leather patch jackets and all the accompanying kinds of riders. Larry said, we were among those badass wannabes, affectionately known as the Rolex bikers. While downing a bud, I overheard Clayton say, copywriter. Now that's an odd word to hear at Will's. So I turned to him and said something like, so you're a copywriter, huh? What do you write? What do you do? Clayton turned to me and said, I write junk mail. So Will said, hey, I have a small ad agency. Perhaps I can give you some work. Clayton, looking me over, said, maybe I can give you some work. I'm booked for 6 months. Now, one of the lessons that Clayton taught me, or that I think many of us recognize, is that we don't have to be the same to share those things that are the same in us. In other words, our differences are not as important necessarily as our similarities, but sharing our differences is important if we do it in a respectful way. Age has the wonderful ability of helping us do that over time. Clayton and I didn't always see the world through the same lens, but our differences were part of what we recognized in each other and to the large degree respected in each other. And the most important and valuable thing I really take away from Clayton is that we never let that separate what we had in common, ever. That's not something we say a lot these days. Clayton and I shared a love of being outside. I'm in the garden, he's on his bike, perhaps. Of music, we both loved music. He was far more rock and roll than I am, but music. He loved his family and Wendy, of course. He loved their life together, all the trips and the renovations to the house, and they were always doing something. And like a good writer, he loved language. He loved its power, its clarity, its ability to take the reader on a journey. Clearly, he did that as a copywriter and made a lot of money. I remember one dinner, one of those wonderful little social events. There were a couple of photos in there. And there were a group of speakers at the table. Wendy and Clayton were there, and the talk turned to poetry. Now, music was far more often Clayton's muse, but we both shared this appreciation for words. And at one point, perhaps after too much wine, I was trying to recite one of Mary Oliver's poems that I was smitten with at the time. And I couldn't remember it exactly, but I stumbled through. Clayton was attentive and gracious as he listened. And then he responded in such a simple way. It made me feel that what I said was even better. And he was able to thread the thought of that poem into the conversation we were having at the table. That's and amazement. Part of that poem, I'll just share 2 or 3 lines because it speaks to me about he's gone, but baby, he ain't gone. He's so living in so many people. Mary Oliver, who I still continue to adore, has a poem, and part of it says, when it's over, I want to say to all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. Well, to me, he made of his life more than something particular and real. And he was married to amazement, and he gifted us with his presence. And no matter who you are or what you do or what you believe, Clayton taught being gracious and kind will take you far with your talents. Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. That was beautiful, Denise. Thank you so much. I respect and relationship. When you talked about those 2 things, that is exactly what Clayton was about. Anybody he talked to was important. At that moment he was talking to them, you were the most important person to him. I love that about him, that respect that he gave to everyone came through, and the fact that he worked on relationships that lasted many, many years, you know, especially in the business. That's been amazing. I do want to make one clarification. I love the compliment. Thank you so much. But that young girl you said was next to Clayton was actually Tiara.
Okay. Because boy, you looked young, honey.
I look really young. Yeah, I look like I was 15, right? Because that's how old she was.
Well, see,
like,
it paid off, Tiara. It paid off, honey.
I just didn't want, I said, oh, I'll take that compliment, but I better be honest about it. But thank you so much. But that's one of my favorite pictures with my kids with Clayton too.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Denise. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.